Brenda Shad brings the strength of her indigenous roots to fashion. She is of Choctaw and Cherokee descent. With steady steps, she moved from behind the scenes to the international circuit, where her face started opening doors and landing covers. In doing so, she built a path that connects roots, voice, and presence, becoming a staple on runways and in editorials. In the image, Gertrude Three Fingers Cheyenne, William E. Irwin shows the focus that defined his work. Active between 1871 and 1935, from 1891 into the early 20th century, he turned to documenting, with documentary rigor, the lives and practices of Native peoples, turning his lens into a bridge between presence and memory for future generations. In the 1926 photo, we see Bear Bull, an elder of the Siksika, a Blackfoot people from northern Canada. Your eye is drawn to the topknot, braided above his forehead. It's not just adornment. The braid marks his role as the keeper of a sacred bundle, tied to the medicine pipe tradition, and it shows the responsibility he carries to his community. For almost a century, the story of the Oglala chief Long Wolf, called Shunkmanitu Hanska, was forgotten. He returned to the spotlight in 1997, when newspapers brought his name back. His life ended in 1892, far from the plains, while he was part of the cast of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show on tour in London. A fate that sealed his memory between two worlds. Around 1901, Fred E. Miller made the photograph Sisters. Known for documenting the lives of indigenous peoples in the United States, he captured a moment on the Crow, or Apsaluk Reservation. In the scene are Whistler and Hits, the one who rides the gray horse, two sisters whose presence draws the eye to the history around them in quiet, contained strength. In the early 20th century, Iron White Man joined the famed Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, then one of the major traveling attractions. Stepping onto that stage took him into a hybrid space, popular spectacle, cultural showcase, and art scene. Between trips, acts, and performances, his image began to circulate as part of this narrative of the West. The ground beneath our feet carries a depth of meaning that goes beyond common understanding. It is sacred by nature. Every particle, every grain of sand, is infused with the life essence of those who came before us. Chief Plenty-Coup, of the Crow tribe. Native peoples knew that to keep their dogs strong, they needed to avoid inbreeding. So they traded puppies with neighboring villages and refreshed their stock with outside bloodlines. This practice, besides preserving the animal's health, explains the variety of dog types that later appeared in records and historical illustrations. In Sioux Urchin's Boy and Girl, Huffman records his early steps after arriving at Fort Keogh in eastern Montana. Made in 1880, the studio photograph shows two Sioux children, probably siblings, and opens a window onto the start of the photographer's path and the context he found on the region's plains. In 1953, at the height of her career, Marilyn Monroe passed through Vancouver and had a moment that left its mark on the city. She met with Chief Joe Mathias of the Capilano Band, the local Indigenous community. The conversation brought two worlds closer, the Hollywood star and an ancestral leader, marking a meeting that echoes as a gesture of respect and cultural exchange. In the 1880s, one name rang out among the Brule Lakota, Spotted Tail, or Sinkte Gleska. As chief, he kept the community united and guided decisions in a time of change that tested traditions. His leadership, recognized inside and outside the group, helped carry them through a decisive chapter in the history of indigenous peoples in America. He left a legacy that still inspires. In 1901, a shutter click at the Fort Hall Reservation in Pocatello, Idaho, captured a northern Shoshone family. The portrait freezes time, attentive faces, restrained gestures, clues to the everyday life of those who lived in that community. By looking into the lens, they record presence and belonging, leaving a trail of memory that carries across generations to today. At the start of the 18th century, the Comanches, with origins distinct from the Shoshone, decided to break away from the lands along the Rocky Mountains. They moved toward the plains and, on that journey, redefined their destiny. Along the migration, they reorganized territories and relationships, settling in Texas, where they became one of the best-known indigenous nations of the plains. Every image holds a story. In this photograph, a woman from the northern Cheyenne tribe appears, captured in the late 1920s or later. She leans on a cane and wears a scarf with intricate handiwork. Her gaze, steady and quiet, gathers memories of long nights around campfires and signals the length of the journey across a lifetime. At the start of the 20th century, a camera captures the face of an Oglala woman. It's not just a portrait. It's a slice of time that hints at routines, beliefs, and the winds of the plains. By fixing her presence, the image quietly keeps traces of a life and a period, preserving memories of this indigenous nation and what it faced. Who are the Shoshone and how did they get so far? Originally from the Great Basin in the western United States, their journeys began there. Over time, they moved north and east, occupying areas that today make up Idaho and Wyoming, and turned that expansion into the thread running through their collective history in search of new landscapes and resources. At a train station around 1930, a photograph captures a Native American woman beside her son. The frame shows a slice of their routines caught between departures and arrivals, and at the same time preserves the mystery. The image gives no names, exact origin, or any detail that would let us identify mother and child. Only the moment remains. A path of reinvention defines him. Between 1951 and 1963, Dan George led the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in British Columbia, Canada. Besides serving as chief, he wrote books and poems. And when many think about stopping, he started over. At 60, he debuted as an actor in film and TV, amplifying his voice and bringing his culture to new audiences. Lucy Thompson, a Yurok leader from Northern California, made history in her community. Born in the area, she grew up immersed in her people's rituals and knowledge. After learning English, she became the first to record, in her own voice, Yurok stories, customs, and memories, building a bridge between tradition and the outside world. Her legacy inspired the preservation of a collective identity. Cianina Redfeather Blackstone from the Muskogee Nation was born in Eufaula, Oklahoma. She used music as a way to talk with audiences and strengthen her roots. On stage, she brought together singing and performance. Offstage, she organized, taught, and demanded respect. In doing so, she connected tradition and the present, made room for her people, and expanded indigenous visibility in American culture. Long before there were maps, the Bannock people have traveled the Great Basin between southeastern Oregon and southern Idaho. Hunting, fishing, and changing routes with the seasons, they built knowledge that came straight from the land. Scarce water, biting cold, tough summers. With every course correction, they strengthened ties to the land, making adaptation not a quick fix, but a way of life. Awe Eyu, a Seneca woman known as Beautiful Flower, rose to prominence in 1908. Her people, speakers of an Iroquoian language, carry a wide and continuous history. Along that path, the Seneca held lands south of Lake Ontario, one of North America's 5 Great Lakes, where paths, alliances, and memories were woven and still echo today. In 1872, the lens captured an Arapaho man. The image opens a door to his people's history, present on the plains of the United States and part of the continent's cultural web. Ways of life, languages, and rituals helped shape that diversity, leaving marks that echo beyond the photograph. The portrait invites us to revisit journeys and challenges. From 1908, Roland Reed's photo, The Moose Call, pulls us to a quiet lake. In a canoe, an Ojibwe person stays alert and blows into a piece of hide or bark, shaping a sound that carries across the water. The gesture, simple and precise, suggests a dialogue with the landscape. The eye follows the breath. The scene shows skill, memory, and presence between tradition and surroundings. A rare record invites a trip through time, a 1906 photograph of the Caddo Nation. The people who lived in areas that are now Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas based their lives on farming the land. In dealings with outsiders, they preferred discretion. The image makes visible a way of life that shaped the region and still echoes in memory today. We see the war chief's tent in a Shoshone village in Wyoming in 1870. More than a dwelling, it was where the community's paths were decided. The layout of the tents and objects, along with the surroundings, shows the Shoshone people's practices and values, creating a living record of how they organized and structured collective life. In 1898, the lens captured Hachasa, the little chief of the Arapaho people. The framing isn't just a pose, it works as a clue to his path and that of his people. By looking at details of his face, clothing, and posture, we open a window onto Arapaho life at the turn of the 19th century and see how the image holds memories words can't reach. Called Pima by 17th century Spanish explorers, these peoples call themselves Akimel o Odom, the people of the river. They live in the Sonoran Desert and keep ties to the ancient Hohokam culture. The scene recorded by Carlo Gentile in 1870 shows members of the community sketching a portrait of their presence and continuity. In 1906, A photograph of Hannah Morrison was taken on the Crow Reservation in southern Montana. Born in 1882, she carried two backgrounds. Her father, Alva James Morrison, came from outside. Her mother belonged to the Crow Nation. The portrait shows that family and cultural crossing, with Hannah posing like someone who connects paths and learns to live between two worlds. In 1925, before leaving, Helen, called Goes Ahead Hogan, was photographed on the Crow Reservation in southern Montana. A woman of the Crow people, she offers herself to the lens like someone delivering a message. Every face holds a story. The portrait calls on descendants to recognize their origin and keep weaving, in the present, the thread of memory, so nothing is lost. Montana, 1901. A photograph shows Duncan Macdonald with his partner. A member of the Flathead tribe, he appears not only as a character but as an echo of his time. The portrait brings together ways of life and bonds from that world, reminding us that keeping personal stories preserves the collective memory. Liked it? Subscribe to the channel to follow more. In 1879, at the Rosebud Agency, a meeting brought together Central Sioux voices. Black Crow, Two Strike, White Thunder, Spotted Tail, and Iron Wing shared the same table to debate the course of their people. Choices, agreements, and tensions came out of there that changed paths and left a legacy that still runs through memories and guides what's to come. At the start of the 20th century in Montana, a Blackfeet camp settles on the horizon, horses loose in the pasture, teepees lined up, routine in motion. Walter McClintock records the scene, and it keeps traveling like magic lantern slides, a technology that projected images and made faraway landscapes appear in darkened rooms, a household spectacle. Montana, 1880. A photograph catches a hunter of the Crow Nation. Hunting, for him and his people, wasn't just sustenance. It marked the seasons, passed on knowledge, and kept the bond with the sacred. In the frame, gesture and terrain speak to each other, and the landscape shows how the tribe followed the mountains, rhythms, and routes that guided life over time. Around 1925, a photograph recorded Lucha, an artist with Euro-American and Chickasaw roots. Known as Songbird and Tessie Mobley, she stood as a bridge between traditions. By following her path, we evoke the Chickasaw Nation from the southeastern U.S. and one of the 5 civilized tribes, guardians of a shared memory that spans generations. In 1926, on the terrace of the Davenport Hotel in Spokane, the camera found Jesse Jim. The shot didn't stay stuck in the portrait. It revealed the steady presence of a woman who carried the voice of the Chelan people. In that frame, city, history, and memory cross paths and stay together, as if the photo were still breathing in time, even today. In 1883, a photograph captured more than a moment. It revealed Tumun, a leader of the Crow Nation. In their language, Apsaluk, this people have lived for centuries in the northwestern United States. Tumun's portrait becomes a portal of memory, opening a path to stories that still echo on the plains and invite us to look again, all the way to the present of whoever's observing. In 1890, a photograph captures Eddie Gray, a descendant of White Elk and a member of the Northern Cheyenne. The portrait, more than a record, sets off a timeline still alive. Rituals, practices, and memories that shape the region and guide its identity. Between the land and the changes, Cheyenne presence persists in dialogue with past, present, and what's ahead. Montana, the first decades of the 20th century. A photo catches the backstage. Dancers of the Flathead tribe adjusting steps and outfits before going in. The shot shifts the gaze offstage and suggests continuity. There, ceremonial dances connect to other expressions of the community, keeping tradition in motion. In 1908 in Montana, the photo Near the End of a Noble Life shows Chief Lewison, leader of the Flathead or Salish. It isn't a simple record, it's a clue to a long path in the northwestern United States. As we face it, we're led to revisit this people's history and to recognize practices and memories that still sustain their identity. In 1923, in Havre, Montana, a photograph gathers the Cree leader Jim Denny, his wife Maggie, descendant of Little Bear, and their children William and Florence. More than a family portrait, it's a record of resistance. a people moving through time preserving language, rights, and memory. Like the story? Subscribe to follow others. In 1958, a photo brought Joyce McDougall forward as a voice from Brockett, on the Pagan Reserve in southern Alberta. The shot isn't just a portrait, it shows her bond with the Blackfoot, an Indigenous nation that crossed the Great Plains of Canada. In the image, memory, land, and identity intertwine, turning remembrance into an emotional map of the territory to this day. In Lawton, Oklahoma, around 1920, the photographer Bates captured a mother with her child, both Comanche. The scene, contained and precise, invites us to step through the frame and reach the history of this people of the Southwest. Displacements, alliances, resistance. In a suspended instant, the presence that shaped the region condenses and continues as legacy. In 1916, in Comanche County, Oklahoma, a photograph showed Pohai, known as Margaret Fiser. Born in 1895, she brought together Comanche and German-American heritages. The family story reveals a unique link. Her father, a German and former prisoner, was welcomed by the Comanche and over time joined the community. This image holds a meeting of worlds. In 1926, a photo shows Alice Gary on the Coeur d'Alene Reservation in northern Idaho, daughter of a line that includes Ignace Hayden Gary and Suzette Josephine Rivet. She stitches together names and memories. The Coeur d'Alene Nation preserves, day by day, knowledge and practices passed hand to hand, tying past and present into a single thread. Montana, early 20th century. Cree chief Rocky Boy poses beside his family. The photo, though, goes beyond the portrait. It condenses routine, kinship, and authority in a single frame. As you follow the faces and postures, you see how leadership and everyday life touched in the Cree community, opening clues about roles, duties, and bonds that supported that period. In 1904, at the Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis, Belle Johnson, from the Blackfeet Reservation, with Picouni and Swedish roots, put a face to the meeting of cultures and the circulation of ideas. Her role affirmed Indigenous leadership, broke stereotypes, and opened space for Native narratives in the national debate. Liked it? Subscribe to the channel. In 1925, on the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, Mary Henry Gunn, Mrs. Alec Gardepee, and Mrs. Jane, women of the Picouni Nation, pose in a modest room gathered around books. The image records the moment when learning to read becomes an act of autonomy. Study as a crossing to open paths and make one's own voice reach new spaces. Montana, early 20th century. A photograph brings together members of the Crow Nation. It's not just a portrait. It records kinship ties, collective life, and rituals. By focusing on faces and gestures, it opens a window onto daily life. It invites us to notice how traditions and relationships sustained life in common, and to listen to what the image's silence preserves. In Taos Pueblo, New Mexico, around 1904, a photograph catches a master crafting arrows. The patient gesture, repeated generation after generation, suggests an unbroken line of a people. Taos Pueblo, among the oldest continuously inhabited Indigenous communities in the U.S., keeps its cultural practices alive and passes them on. In 1909, a photographer recorded members of the Crow Nation at the Crow Agency, Montana. The scene shows the people's permanence in the mountains and connects past and present, reminding us of their place in the indigenous mosaic of the U.S. The Crow Agency was the administrative link between the federal government and the community, and the record invites us to look beyond the image to a history of relationships. In 1907, the daughter of Chief Nikolai posed in a studio in Valdez, Alaska. A member of the Otna people, she was photographed before a harbor scene that was growing on the shore of the Gulf of Alaska. As the gold rush advanced, Valdez became a waypoint. It crossed paths, brought cultures closer, and fed new ambitions. Around 1907, Bula Tahamont appears in records that crossed decades. She belongs to the Abenaki and Oneida nations, living threads of the indigenous mosaic of North America. At the dawn of the century, their communities preserved traditions while dealing with losses and pressures as European